simply say a yes on the chat section, that would be amazing. Okay, so I can see we have around 15 people live. So let's get started. So I'm really glad to welcome you to this session with e-GMAT, where we'll be in conversation with Ridhi Ghelani, who is the Associate Admissions Director at IESE Business School. Now, Ridhi looks after full-time MBA and executive programs at IESE and is an alumna of IESE as well. So she is the best candidate to offer insights on both fronts, right? As an admissions director who is looking to select the best candidate, and as a student who went through the journey and who knows how to put the best foot forward. So, welcome, Ridhi.
Hi, Karthikeya. Thank you so much. And thank you again for this amazing opportunity to meet and interact with all of these amazing prospective candidates, in the next couple of minutes that we'll have with them.
Definitely. And, ISA's live event was the first live event that I hosted for e-GMAT back in 2018. And it's the fourth time that we are doing this. So it's almost like a yearly tradition now. So thank you so much for doing this. Right. So Ridhi, why don't you get started and why don't you take over from here?
Great. Thank you so much, Karthikeya, again. All right. Just give me a moment. I will kickstart with a presentation, and hopefully, guys, my agenda and aim for today is to give you an as much of an insider's perspective, right? And I think much like Karthikeya mentioned, as a former student, I've been in your shoes, I've been in your position, struggling to give this mammoth exam, number one, and then of course deciding, okay, now that I have my GMAT out of the way, what can I do? Which school do I target? Which is a cultural fit, which is an academic fit, which is a career fit, right? And I think all of these are such valid and important questions, which I'm sure all of you will grapple with at some point or the other. And I think today my objective will be to make sure that I give you as much information on this and hopefully answer a lot of your questions and queries as well. So before we spend more time, I think let's kickstart. I'm hoping everyone can see my presentation. Kathy, could you just give me a confirmation? Okay, perfect. All right. All right, guys. So what's the agenda for today going to be like, right? As you can see, I want to make this as interactive as possible, right? So in big bold red, you will see that there are several Q&A opportunities that I have for you through the entire session, so that we go through a small section of the presentation and then I answer your questions, right? Whether it's about academics, whether it's about GMAT, whether it's about who should or who are the right people, right, to come to IESE. And then, of course, something that's most relevant to you is careers and what are my career prospects post the MBA, right? And I think the last part is something that we always like to add for the e-GMAT audience is a special slide on how to ace your IESE application, right? So some tips and tricks that I applied when I was, looking to get my admissions at IESE. And then, of course, now as the admissions director, I'm sorry, I think we're getting a comment saying that the audio is not clear. Karthikeya, are you being able to hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you. I would just suggest, Asmit, that can you please join again or maybe use your phone because I can clearly hear Ridhi.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Great. Thank you, guys. Sorry for the interruption. So, like I said, let's move on and hopefully we'll interact along the way as well. So let me start by giving you a quick introduction to myself. I know Karthikeya has done a wonderful job in already doing so. My name is Ridhi Ghelani. Well, I am the Associate Director for Admissions. I look after India. Also an alumnus, like I mentioned. I graduated back in 2017, which obviously feels like eons ago today. But I do think that the core value and the core culture that IESE fosters is something that's true even today, right? And it inculcates in each of us who are also part of the admissions team. Also, a fun fact, everyone on the admissions team at IESE is an alumni, right? Because we truly believe that we want to build a community that's collaborative, right? That's coming together to support each other. And I think who better than former students to identify who would be the right fit, right? And what are your unique contributions that will only add to the overall community experience at IESE. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about what my journey was like at IESE, right? As you can see, I have two very faint pictures because, like I said, my experiences were eons ago. So, but it's also to give you a very strong idea of what diversity truly means for us, right? As you can see, there are about several flags on this slide, right? This team or this group that you can see was my learning team that I was assigned on day one of my MBA. And through the entire year one, this team became my family, right? We went through the highs, the lows, the good days, the bad days, crazy presentations, team, hustling together to make sure that we go through every case prep and also supporting one another in our career preps, right? Whether it's doing mocks for each other, whether it's, reading cover letters and editing resumes, so you put your best foot forward. And you can see that we were a team of 8, and yet we had so many different nationalities just represented in one single team. So I had a Brazilian teammate, I had a Brit family business, I was of course from India, I had someone from France, I had an Israeli Air Force pilot on my team, I had a Swiss national, and then of course I had 2 Spaniards on my team. So you can imagine that on day one itself, IESE is pushing you beyond your comfort zone, right? Imagine walking into your team room with people who all speak different languages. And of course, the one common thread you have is your passion to pursue this MBA, right? Your passion to grow and your passion to learn. And I think what happened over the period of 1 year and eventually 2 years, because we were this one big happy family, right? Like we continued to kind of meet each other, go for dinners, host each other, do escape rooms through the entirety of 2 years. But I think the first year, which is so crucial in establishing your time at IESE, these people were the backbone for me, right? And I think this is the kind of experience that each of you will have, at IESE. The school takes a lot of effort, guys, in making sure that every team is unique, not only from a cultural standpoint, but also from an academic and a professional standpoint, right? Now, why IESE, right? I mean, something that I know a lot of us, especially in the Indian community, look for is rankings. And well, the rankings have been, pretty supportive to the program. As you can see, even in 2022, we featured number 3 in Europe, number 10 globally by Financial Times. And something that's still an area that we're still reigning at is being number 1 in CSR, right? Which also goes to show that IESE is continuing to take a lot of effort, especially in the field of sustainability. And you will see a correlation to this when I talk more about the academic structure of the program, right? Now, this is what I wanted to talk about, right? What does the IESE MBA academic journey look like, right? Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, saying that what will my 2 years span out to be? What skills will I gain? What soft skills, hard skills, leadership capabilities, teamwork will I take away from these immersive 2 years that I spent at IESE? Now, this gives you a very clear snapshot of it. If you are admitted to the program, you find yourself on campus in the month of August, right? Now, we have a very fun start to the MBA with something called the Business Spanish program. Of course, the Business Spanish program is optional, but personally, having done it, I highly recommend it because it's a great way to bond with your peers in your class even before the whole chaos of the MBA begins, right? So you have 2 weeks of immersive learning, of immersive Spanish learning. But let me tell you that not knowing Spanish is also completely okay, right? The only Spanish I learned, to be very honest, were these 2 weeks before the MBA began. And I came away with knowing 3 or 4 phrases. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Un poquito español, por favor. So I think, and I didn't survive. I think I thrived, not only in Barcelona, but also on campus. So while Spanish is not a mandatory requirement for you, but I think it's always a good to have, right? I mean, it is one of the most spoken languages, globally after English. So why not, right? But your main courses start in the month of September all the way to May is when you go through 24 core courses. Now these are so essential to creating your business fundamental and the business acumen that all of you guys, I'm sure, are looking for from an MBA program, right? So whether it's deep diving into something that's core to just accounting, right? So you do managerial accounting, financial accounting, capital markets, um, like fintech, right? Finance and tech. You'll on the other hand do courses like luxury marketing, PR, ethics in marketing, right? And then on the other end, you're also learning about strategy, operations, leadership, human resources, how to hire and retain talent. I mean, so you can imagine that through the entire year one, you're going through something which is building such a strong foundation in business for you, that's going to support every and any career choice that you make for yourself post the MBA, right? Now, come June is when you have the opportunity to either go for your summer internship, or I'm sorry, Divya, I know that the slide is a bit small right now on this platform, but I'll try to be as explanatory as possible so that I can probably give you a clear view of what each element on the slide talks about. Um, so, what the summer internship or the summer period is essentially, you have corporate internships. We have 400 plus companies that come to campus, and I'll touch upon that when we hit the career section of the presentation. So, if you're looking at consulting, tech, finance, a corporate industry role, right? You want to go into social impact, you want to get a development consulting job, or if you do have an entrepreneurial idea that you want to work on, you can also use the summer to work on creating an MVP, maybe creating a business plan using resources that IESE has to offer, along with professors and peers, to essentially be ready to go out there and probably even get funding, right, at the end of 2 years. Now you see there are two sections here, something called 15 months and 19 months. Now, what's the difference between these two, right? The core difference, guys, is that if you decide to do the 15-month program or the accelerated MBA, you give up the summer internship to essentially complete your core electives during that period, right? Now, if you ask me who would be a viable candidate for 15 months, now again, this is your choice, this is your prerogative, and you can decide almost 8 months into the program whether you want 15 months or the 19 months, right? So that's the level of flexibility IESE is going to offer you. Now, if you are somebody who comes from family business background, if you are probably somebody who is a sponsored candidate, right? Or if you know that you're coming back to a specific industry or a company post your MBA, to me, the 15-month MBA program would be the absolute right fit for you, right? Because that means that you are not spending more time away from the corporate world or your family business, and at the same time you're making the most of an MBA experience. But I think if, as an international Indian candidate, if you are looking to transition or pivot to a career geographically in Europe or the UK, to me the internship becomes an absolutely crucial point for you to eventually get a full-time job or an offer. So I think if you are looking for living and continuing to work in the Europe or the UK, 19 month is what I would go for, right? Now, come year two, you have a plethora of amazing opportunities that you can explore, right? You, of course, have 130 plus electives to really chart what your academic journey will look like. You also have concentrations, and this year we've introduced a new concentration tying to what I said earlier, which is on sustainability and responsible business, right? Given the fact that we're constantly reigning number one in on FT and CSR, it only was fitting that we sort of build a concentration, which is around sustainability and responsible business. So in year two, you have the opportunity to either define your concentrations across international business, finance, data analytics and digital business, sustainability, or even entrepreneurship and innovation. The other two opportunities that you have are something called the international exchange and the international modules, right? The international modules are 2-week programs that happen in our other campuses that exist, which are in either in Nairobi, in Sao Paulo, in New York, or in China, in Shanghai, right? And essentially, what happens is that you spend 2 weeks really learning about areas of business that are very fundamental to these locations. So if it's Nairobi, you're going to learn about business in a very politically, dynamic environment. If it's New York, you're learning about capital markets, finance, tech innovations, right? The other thing which you can utilize is something called the international exchange program. Now, I myself, was a candidate of an international exchange. I made use of this opportunity and went to Cornell Johnson Business School for an entire semester. It was a great way for me to really expand and leverage the international exposure that IESE has to offer, right? And I mean, what's bonus, right? I came out with 2 networks, one from IESE and one from Cornell, got to experience 2 different universities, 2 very different methods of teaching, right? And I think it was a great way in which IESE can continue to keep pushing you to grow and learn. And I mean, of course, you come back in your final term, finish your electives, and graduate, in the month. So I think for each of you applying now, you would ideally be graduating in the month of May 2025. All right. Before we move on to the Q&A, I have one last slide on, which talks about something that's so coveted at DSA, right? Which is the case methodology. Now, having studied myself in a very traditional Indian, academic system where I went to class, there was a professor narrating a lecture, and I was often tested on my ability of retention rather than understanding the concept, right? So this was one of the key reasons why I chose IESE as well. It gave me the opportunity to go to class and look at a business problem from a very real lens. I mean, on day 1, I was working on probably a Netflix story. On day 2, I was probably working on a Spotify story. Day 3, I was working on Zara expanding digitally versus reducing physical presence. Day 4, I was talking about Benihana, which is an American, joint of Asian food and a very operations heavy case study. But the one thing that's common to all of this is that you are learning about business concepts by a clear understanding of how each of these apply to your to business, to industries, to countries and cultures, right? And I think this is a great way for you to break away your personal biases, come to class and really embrace what 70 other peers have to even share and talk about that same business problem that you have perhaps analyzed as well, right? All right. So I'll take a quick break here for a few minutes and answer any queries regarding all of these different slides that we've seen up so far.
Sure. So we have a question from Saurabh Mahajan.
Yes.
So guys, we'll take questions which are relevant to sections, and all the questions which do not fall under any of the sections, we'll answer them during the final Q&A. So
Yes.
the first question that we have is from Saurabh. So he's asking whether do you need to be fluent in Spanish to be job ready after an MBA in Spain?
Well, thank you, Saurabh, for asking the question. I want to say no, right? Because I will come to this, very, very shortly about as an international applicant or a non-Spanish speaker, what markets will be your target markets, right? And Spain is not going to be the only market. In fact, it's going to be one of the smaller markets that you focus your efforts and energies on. And every recruiter that comes to campus is looking at global recruitment, right? So you're looking at recruiting in various offices across Europe, UK, and even Dubai. So in a nutshell, no, you don't need to be Spanish ready to get yourself a job post the MBA.
So the second question that I have is from Proma. So she's basically asking whether there'll be a conflict during international exchange. So will there be a conflict with networking and hiring opportunities on campus?
Great question, Proma. Thank you so much for asking. Well, I want to say that it again depends on what industry you're looking to recruit in, right? So if you are looking at consulting or finance or IB, like I mentioned, the internship is a great segue to get yourself a full-time offer, which means that more often than not, you will have your full-time offer even before you start your year 2. So in that case, no, the exchange program is not a conflict at all. However, in certain cases, we have career forums that happen across both the fall as well as the spring semester, right? So if at any point you realize that maybe you've done an internship in the next industry, but you want a full-time role in another industry, potentially I would be more conservative in identifying which career forums either the fall or the spring cater to your needs, and then identifying. Having said that, international exchanges, while majority are in the fall semester, we also have some excellent ones in the spring semester. So you can always choose. I think there's always a great balance that you can find.
So I have one more question from the
Yes.
consistent guy. So he's asking, are the 24 courses inclusive of electives? And further, do you get enough time to take up additional electives?
Well, thank you, Mr. Consistent Guy. But 24 courses are your core courses. These are going to be compulsory for each of you to go through. These do not include electives. You have 130 electives in your year two to completely immerse yourself in a more deeper academic journey, right? So 24 courses that you do in the first year. The entirety of the first year is going to be these 24 core courses. So in a nutshell, you have a lot of time to learn at IESE.
Okay, so we are getting a lot of questions, so let's cover some
Yes,
of them
and
quickly.
we're going
So,
to, yeah, maybe let's take one last one and get on with the presentation, and
yes,
then we try to get to them later.
yes. So, is sustainability included as part of curriculum?
Yes, of course, Amol, it is. Like I mentioned, we've introduced a new concentration altogether, which starts this year, which is called Sustainability and Responsible Business. You have about 8 different courses under this concentration that you can choose, whether it's, PE and VC in sustainability, right? Development consulting or social impact consulting. What it takes to sort of run a sustainable entrepreneurial venture, right? So there are several and more opportunities, and yes, it's very much part of our curriculum now.
Okay, that's great. It's a pretty active chat section, and that's great. So, let's get done with the presentation, and then,
Perfect.
yeah, over to you,
Perfect.
Ridhi.
Thank you.
By the way, just one final thing, if you want, we can explore this layout if this works for you.
Great. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, guys. I think of I think I'm going to get a lot of questions from this section as well. So I'm going to brace myself for it, but I'm going to try and explain as much as I can, right? So what is the typical MBA class profile look like, right? So to quickly run over the statistics, something that you'll also find on the website is that our every class is made up of 350 to 360 students. The one thing that you want to stress upon is that you have 55 plus nationalities and 85% international students, right? And I think the very first slide, or the second slide that I shared with you, where I just took you through what my team looked like, right? And the kind of representation just one team out of the 350 students had really talks to you about what diversity truly means to us at IESE, right? Now, the average age is 29 and the average work experience is 5.4. But guys, this is just an average. Doesn't mean that somebody who's a 25-year-old or a 31-year-old does not get into the program. To us, yes, having too little or too much experience could put you into like very small brackets of the community that you'll be part of in class. But yes, we have a huge mix of age and work experience that come to campus. We do need a minimum of 3 years of work experience, so that's something that's non-negotiable, unless of course in certain cases we really understand what your level of impact has been, right, for work experience at lesser than 3 years. Now GMAT is a question that I'm going to also spend some time on. 680, this figure lies on our website, and we like to say that this is the average GMAT that we have. But again, it's a range, right? We look at GMAT, which ranges from even below 680 to, of course, which is also even higher to 680. And why is this GMAT so important, right? And let's spend some time understanding that. Now, why is your GMAT score important to your application, right? And I think there are 3 main reasons why. Number one, it helps us assess your academic risk, right? Now, what's academic risk? Through the GMAT, you're put through like a very high pressure test environment. We're testing your analytical skill sets, your critical reasoning skill sets, your ability to think on your feet, your ability to handle the pressure of going through a lot of prep work, academic work, and showcasing that at the end, right? So that's number one when we say academic risk. Number two, while taking a decision on your scholarships, as part of the application process, I'm sure a lot of you might be wanting to apply for scholarships. While the GMAT is just one part of the consideration for your admission, the scholarship decision typically takes place once post your admit, right? So, but a key criteria that we look at, or a key metric that we look at, is your GMAT. So if you do have a 700 plus GMAT, it of course lends to your capabilities of getting a scholarship, either need based, and definitely if you're looking for merit based scholarship, right? And number three, of course, is if you want to pursue your career in consulting post the MBA. A lot of consulting companies do ask for GMAT scores, especially at the time of final recruitment, right? Because they do also want to ensure that you have strong high pressure test environment capabilities, analytical skill sets, communication skill sets, all of them super critical to succeed as a consultant. And on the other hand, I'm sure a lot of you might ask, but what if I have a GMAT which is lower than 680, right? How do I combat this GMAT score on my application so that it doesn't become a deterrent? And what I would say is that leverage your undergraduation GPA, right? Tell us that, look, I'm good at business. I'm good at, quant. I'm good at communication and verbal, skill sets, right? Showcase your analytical skill sets via your resume, via your essays. Tell us that even though my GMAT is probably a 650, but I have been working in this organization, in this role, which constantly requires me to work with big data, which constantly requires me to manage different stakeholders, make strong presentations. Talk to us about courses that you may have done, which can further add to your capabilities of being able to go through what a low GMAT might not offer, right? And when, of course, I like saying that, if your GMAT is very low, I would probably think about retaking the GMAT. But then again, this is optional. Having said that, we have a lot of, admission deadlines coming up, which I'll share with you in a bit. If you already have taken your GMAT and you do plan to retake it, I would go ahead and not wait for the second time and apply with the current score. Use the optional essay to tell us that, look, I've currently applied with this GMAT, but I'm going to retake my GMAT 2 weeks from now, because there is a long gestation period from the time you apply to the time you actually hear about your final decision, right? You can utilize that opportunity to give your GMAT and even up or better your score, right? So this is in a nutshell about what the class profile looks like and how important or how relevant is the GMAT score to your application. Quickly, questions pertaining to this?
Yeah, so I see a lot of GMAT related questions. So there is one from Prince Rai, which is what should be the minimum GMAT score to get admission for 15 months MBA program?
All right. So, well, Prince, number one, there is no difference whether you apply for 15 or 19 months. You don't even have to make this decision on day one. We don't make this decision for you on day one. Like I mentioned earlier, you have 8 months to decide whether you want the 15-month track or the 19-month track. So the admission process stays the same. There is no minimum GMAT that we need as such. The average is usually a combination of admits that we've seen both on the lower side of 680 and the higher side of 680. So I don't think there is a minimum GMAT, but I would say anything lower than the 600s would definitely be questionable.
Okay, great. So I have taken one question. So you had that slide on average class profile. So I have a question which goes into extreme. So Vishal, I think, has been unemployed for 6 years and he was preparing for UPSC, and I think he wants to now go for IESC. So will he be eligible, or can he get into IESC full-time program?
Very interesting question, Kartike. And hi, Vishal. What I would say, Vishal, is that if you do intend to apply for the program, I would still use the resume to really talk about how you've grown in these 6 years, right? I'm sure that even while preparing for the civil service exam, which I am aware that it is one of the toughest in the country to get past, right? I want you to talk about what your experiences have been. Have you been doing any volunteer work? Have you been doing any freelance work that can show us your capabilities of having grown as an individual. And I think it'll also be very interesting to see what your career path looks like post the MBA, right? And I would try to link the two. So, where do you see yourself post the MBA? Because I'm assuming you want to pursue an MBA to be able to transition or pivot to a role which is currently unattainable, right? So, use your post MBA career path and then reflect upon what have I done in these last 6 years that can show us at the admissions committee that you are ready for this change. You have skill sets, whether it's academic, analytical, communication, hard skills, soft skills that you would have gained through different experiences and not just a professional experience. In your case, I would say.
Okay, so another related question, but it goes into the work ex. So is 9 to 10 years of work ex considered negative?
Definitely not, Ashmit. But what I would, like I said, is that 10 years or more of work experience puts you in a very small subset of the overall community that we have, right? So yes, I personally have admitted candidates in the last 6 months, with 10 plus years of work experience. However, you want to spend time through the application form, really telling us why you want to pursue an MBA and not an executive MBA at this point, right? Why is it that you feel that just an MBA and not the executive would be more suitable for you? And I'll tell you why, right? Because at the end of the day, an MBA is also a lot about networking. It's also a lot about interacting and engaging with your peers, especially at IESE, because whether it's your learning team, whether it's case method, whether it's every other form of activity that you do, you are constantly engaging with your class. So you want to ask yourself, do I want to be surrounded by a majority of my peers who are probably 4 years younger to me, or would I rather be in a group which is more homogeneous to my age and experience?
Makes sense. So let's take one more question. Now, this
Yeah.
is something that you answered, but I think let's get more clarity on the timeline. So Amol is expecting to take the GMAT in October, but the earlier rounds are starting in September. So like, what's that timeline? So you said 2 weeks. So is it flexible or is it like max 2 to 3 weeks?
So Amol, what I would say is that our early round deadline is September 6th, right? Which is like less than a month away. Now, if you were intending or are intending to take your GMAT, say by the 20th of September, I would still be willing to make an exception. However, what I wanted to mention was that maybe if you already have an old score, right? I would submit because GMAT is a compulsory aspect of your application, right? So if you do have an old score, I would go ahead and apply in the early round so that you don't miss that deadline with an old score, but highlighting very clearly in your application when you plan to retake your GMAT, and keep us updated with even your unofficial score ASAP, followed by your official score, which I know comes a week later after you give your test.
Okay. So Riddhi, I'm seeing a lot of questions which are profile related. Shall I share the evaluate my profile link with them so
Yes,
that
please. Yes, please. So I'll just quickly share one line on that. All of you who are asking me questions about your profile, guys, Karthikeya is going to share a link which is called feedback on your profile, right? This is your chance to submit your resume or your LinkedIn, profile with us, and I will personally go through each of those and reach out to you with my feedback on your profile. Right? So I think it's a great way for you to connect with me beyond this forum, so that we don't spend too much time just on one particular candidate.
definitely. So any one of you who wants to get feedback on your profile can reach out to Riddhi, and I'll also share her email IDs with you so you can mail her. So
Perfect.
yeah, so I think we can continue now.
Great. I think, yeah, perfect. All right. All right, guys. Now, a very important part that I think all of you should pay attention to is the career development, right? Because I think this is key for each of you to understand what your journey will look like post the MBA, right? Now, for instance, what are the typical statistics that we look at, or you would look at, when looking at ISE to pursue your MBA? As you can see, our top three industries that we do really well in are consulting, followed by finance, followed by tech. Right? A third of the class, guys, goes into consulting, which means that ISE really prepares you from day one to actually succeed as a consultant. And I'll tell you why. whether it's case method, whether it's working with a diverse team on day one, whether it's going through the capstone project that will be part of your year one team, your final team finale project, or of course the opportunity to really sort of immerse yourself in peer-to-peer learning. This is what consulting is all about. It's about developing a problem solving mindset. Through the course of year one itself, you'll go through about 200 plus case studies. So you can imagine that you're already solving 200 business problems by the time you even get to your internship phase. So by the time you finish 2 years, you've probably done 400, or you've solved 400 business problems. So at the end of the day, whether you go into consulting or finance or tech or marketing or operations, the one thing that's common between all of you is this analytical mindset, which is constantly looking at, this is a business problem, this is the industry, this is the context, these are the three ways in which I can provide a solution to this. Right now, of course, employee recruitment also happens via various different opportunities. Like I mentioned, we have something called career forums, which happen on campus twice a year. 400 plus companies come to campus representing various industries, various functional roles. Right. The second thing that you have is something called career treks. As you can see, some parts that are highlighted on the map are, say for instance, in UK you have the consultant track, the banking track, the fintech track, the marketing track, the retail track. You would also have similar ones in Paris, some similar ones in Dublin, similar ones in Dubai. In Asia, you have the Asia Career Fair for a lot of you who plan to come back probably to India or Asia, for instance. Right? You also have something called the Silicon Valley track, right? Because we understand that if you are a budding entrepreneur, what better than a Silicon Valley experience to really get those entrepreneurial spirits going. So I think in a nutshell, IESE is looking at you from a global recruitment standpoint. So I know one of you all asked me earlier that, is Spanish, do I need to be fluent in Spanish to eventually recruit in Spain? And like I said, Spain is not even going to be your target market, as an Indian applicant. You are in fact going to be looking at markets like Netherlands, Denmark, Luxembourg, Dublin, the UK, of course, Dubai, Singapore. And I'll just come to a slide where I've sort of collated companies where Indian students have found themselves placed post the MBA, right? So for you, whether it's a McKinsey, a Bain, a BCG, whether it's an Amazon, Microsoft, Siemens, or on the other hand, whether it's a PepsiCo or a Henkel that's coming to campus, they're all recruiting us for global offices. So for you, the opportunity is literally like the world is your oyster, right? All of Europe, all of UK is open for you all to look at from a job placement standpoint, because these are the countries which are also very, very open to hiring native English speakers and also very open to sponsoring visas. Now, this will give you a very strong idea of where Indian candidates find themselves post the MBA. Now, these are live examples of where currently we either have alumni or current students either doing internships or, of course, doing a full-time offer. So as you can see, UK takes the bulk of it, right? And which means that IESE also does very well on placing you in the UK. Right? So whether that's banking, like I mentioned, with companies like Credit Suisse, Bank of America, Citibank, American Express, or you have the tech. So you have your Facebook, now Meta, of course, you have your Google, or on the other hand, you have something in consulting. So you have your Bain, you have your McKinsey, or retail, PepsiCo, for instance. Right? I think London or the UK in general hires extensively as a location, at IESE. Another, or rather a bunch of locations that you would look at, like I mentioned, are Germany, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Denmark, right? And all of these companies have offices and representation in each of these different, parts of Europe, and again, hire extensively as an Indian applicant, right? Now, if you are looking at probably going to Dubai, I would say Middle East is a great, great place for consulting. And they're also a lot more lenient and a lot more welcoming to Indian natives. Right. So I think if you're looking at companies like the MBB, you're looking at Delta, you're looking at Monitor, you're looking at Strategy, and I would definitely put Dubai on the radar when it comes to post MBA recruitment. And I think with this, yes, and I have one more slide for you before we go to questions on this, which is about professional clubs. Now, of course, I give you a lot of insight into, career forums, career tracks, and various things that happen, from a career development center standpoint, but something that's very led by you, by the students, by us rather, right? I mean, former me, is something called the professional clubs or the student-led clubs, right? Now, so whether that's a interest-based club, which is something called the wine club or the salsa club, or something which is professional like the consulting, the tech, the fintech, the finance, the retail and luxury, the PEVC, global energy, doing good, doing well. All of these, are not only great opportunities for you to connect with your peers outside of class and like-minded peers, right? Because if you are part of consulting and you have 20 other members who are part of the consulting club, all of you have either the passion to grow in this industry, or some experience in it, or some network opportunities in this, right? So I think that's what the IESE MBA is all about. It's about giving you enough and more, the front door, the side door, the back door to recruitment, right? And then of course you also need to meet the school midway. And if you're expecting that everything's going to be handed over on a silver platter, then it's going to be a bit of a shocker. But I think the school in general takes a lot of effort in meeting you more than midway, right? And I think with this, I'll take questions which are more career focused if we have.
Yes. So we have a question from Vivek. So he is working in a very technical power sector job and he wants to switch to consulting. So he wants to understand how will ISC enable that?
Of course, great question, Vivek. And something that I mentioned, on one of the slides was that a third of the class, or 33% of the class, does something called the triple jump, right? And you're an ideal candidate for a triple jump. Now, what's a triple jump? A triple jump is something that you're looking at changing geography, industry, and functional role, right? And in your case, all of the three. So for you, the triple jump is something that ISE is already doing a lot for, right? A third of the class, which means that it's a huge chunk which is looking at entering the MBA with a very different experience and going into something completely different altogether. And I think how the IESE MBA can definitely prepare you for consulting, like I mentioned, is I think from the academic standpoint, whether it's case method, whether it's your 24 core courses, whether it's your 130 plus electives, right? So I think every and any skill set that you think is currently missing. Now, maybe you have a very strong data analytical mindset given your technical background and your current job, but maybe what you're lacking is an understanding of operations, an understanding of accounting, and that's what ISE will do for you, right? Number two, the consulting club is the largest club on campus, right? Student-led club is a professional club. We also have one of our largest alumni base, Indian alumni base, in Europe within consulting. And with these consulting club opportunities, we bring alumni to campus. We do mentorship, buddy sessions. We indulge in you learning and cracking the case method, which is something that you will hear about right from day one on campus, right? That, oh my God, I need to crack that case interview, for my MBB, or my Deloitte, or my strategy and job interview. And I think that's what IESE really helps you do, right? IESE has, I think, over 10 different platforms and case study books that you can really, if you are that interested and really want to kill it, I think you can go through 1,000+ mock case interviews and actually be prepared with any and every question that might come your way. So I think from a career development center standpoint, from the academic standpoint, and I think student engagement standpoint, all of these three come together to really prepare you for this triple jump, especially in consulting.
That's great. I hope, Vivek, that answers your question. And Priyanshi, I see that you have a very similar question. So I hope that what Rithi just said answers your question as well. So I have Double Dash who has asked a very similar question, but it's more data related, right? What are the chances of, making a triple jump? Like, do you have any stats over this?
So, the statistics that I did share with you does include international or Asian candidates, right? Because when I say triple jump, it's mainly pertaining to Asian or international candidates. Because the ones who are in Europe, for them, geographical change is not too hard. It's harder for us. So I think when I say 33%, majority of that is us. Majority of that is Asians, well, Indians, and then of course, we have a smaller chunk of Southeast Asian candidates. So this 33% is usually incorporates the highest number of Indians and Southeast Asians as a number.
That's great. So I have one more question and then we can move on. So Saurabh has asked, like someone who has completed the 15-month course or MBA, can he apply for the campus recruitment, or is it
Yes.
meant for people who have, went through the 19-month duration?
Not at all, Saurabh. Well, you can very much go through every recruitment opportunity, whether it's a career forum, whether it's the treks, right? What I spoke about, consulting track, finance track, banking track, whether it's being part of the student clubs and leveraging those resources, you will be a part of the same entire hall. Yes, what will change is that the internship recruitment opportunities that come to campus, you might have to give that a skip, right? Because you want to use your summer to finish your electives. So especially, again, like I mentioned, and I want to stress on this, that if you are looking at a career in consulting or finance, especially IB, guys, internship is usually golden key to getting a full-time offer. So, in a nutshell, yes, you can make use of every opportunity that's available on campus, like every other 19-month student does.
Cool. Yeah. So
Great. All right. I think we're pretty much to the last leg of our presentation, guys, and I'll try to get in as many questions as I can after this. But I think this is also very important and would be of interest to you, which is what does the admissions process entail, and what are these insights that Ridhi promised us, at the beginning of the presentation, right? So, guys, the first slide is, of course, something that you want to make note of, which are our key dates and deadlines. Number one, we have the very first deadline coming up on 6th September, like I mentioned. This is the early decision round. If for any reason you do not meet the September 6th deadline, I wouldn't worry too much, because October 11th, which is round one, is right there, right? And I think round one is still a very, very great opportunity for you to apply in early. The earlier you apply, A, of course, your chances of getting in are higher. B, scholarships are a much more stronger possibility, right? Because it's common sense. We have a total pool of, say, 100 euros. We want to allocate these funds and gratify students who've come to us much early on in the cycle rather than towards the end. The later you apply, the pool of scholarship is, of course, deteriorating, which means that I have less and less funds to allot to you. Right? So I think the deadlines are something that I would like you to make a note of. This information is, of course, available on the website. The new application is also live for you to start working on. Quickly running you through what the requirements of the application process are. We, of course, need a completed online application form. We need a one-page resume. There are two personal essays. This year, we've changed our essay. We no longer have, who inspires you and why. We've changed that to a very interesting question, which asks about your impact on an individual, a company, or a community, and what did you learn from it, right? Because I think we really want you to think about ways in which you have gone beyond your designated role or your designated description to really create an impact. And it could be an impact on even one individual, but I'd really like to know about that. So you have two personal essays. The second essay is, of course, about your career goals and why you think IESE is the right fit for you. You also have something called the optional essay. Now, here's a pro tip, right? And you want to make a note of this. It's not an optional essay. Use it. Write the optional essay and tell us a little bit more about you. Use that, those 300 words to give us a new story, to tell us about something that's interesting that we probably haven't read, or maybe we might not have spent too much time on, through the application. I know we say optional essay, but trust me when I say that the more data points you give us, the more we learn about you, right? So this is when it comes to essays. We of course need your official transcripts. Like I mentioned, we need a GRE or a GMAT score. Like I said, you have a 2-week window post your submission of the application to revise or re-give your GMAT score. For you, you do not need to worry about the English test per se as an Indian applicant, because if you have gotten your undergraduate or schooling done in English and your transcript mentions that, then the English test is waived for you, right? We need one letter of recommendation. We need a photo. And if you are looking to apply for a scholarship, there's a short scholarship essay which asks about how do you plan to fund your MBA, and of course, tell us why you deserve the MBA at last, right? And Just to give you another perspective on what the fee structure looks like, plus scholarships and loans that you can opt for. The fees this year are 99,500 euros. We do have two bank tie-ups with Spanish banks called Banco Sabadell and Caixa Bank. Both of these provide up to 60% of your tuition cost. We also are connected with Prodigy Finance, right? Now, this covers up to 80% of your total cost of attendance. That's your living and tuition cost. Like I mentioned, ISE does very well on scholarships as well. So the earlier you apply, the better your chances are. Scholarships often range from 10 to 50% of your tuition fees. And I think this is a slide that I really wanted to talk about, giving you a very insider speak on how do you ace your IESE MBA application, right? Very simple, nothing too complicated. The crux of this is that we want you to be authentic, we want you to tell your story, and we want you to be unique, right? Now, tell us, number one is give us evidence that you know the school, right? Of course, attend these sessions, talk about these sessions in your application. Tell me if you picked up something unique that you may not have read on the brochure or the website, and tell me why. This is why I think ISE is in alignment with my values or what my career and academic goals are. Right? Use the essays to really showcase an understanding that you have about the program that goes so much beyond the website and the brochure. Right? Now, the second tip is that talk to us very clearly about what your career aspirations are. We understand that plans change, but having some path, having clarity on where you see yourself post the MBA is very critical, guys, because from day one it's going to be chaos. You're going to be doing case studies, you're going to be orienting to life in Barcelona, you're going to be doing recruiting from day zero, you're going to be adjusting to coming back to school. And amidst all of this, you want to make sure that you not only have your plan A, but also your plan B ready, that in case consulting doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to go for, right? Tell us about your transferable skills that you have that can help you already make this transition. And I think number three is something that's important to us is your leadership capabilities and your ability to work as a good team player, right? Diversity and teamwork are so important to us at IESE. So I would say give examples, use examples to really show us that you have these core skill sets, right? Talk about extracurricular activities that you're indulged, that you're invested in, right? It gives us a different flavor of who you are, so much beyond just your resume and just your academic and professional achievements at large. So I think if you kind of keep in mind that you address all of these different aspects in your application, I don't see a reason why I wouldn't want to admit you into the program, right? And I think from a hygiene perspective, make sure that you copy paste the essay correctly, make sure that there are no grammatical errors, and always make sure that you're answering the prompt or answering the question head on, right? And I think with this, we're at the end of slides that I have for you. And I do know that we have a couple of minutes. So I'm going to try and squeeze in as many questions as I possibly can. So let's go, Karthikeyan.
Yes. So let's start with internship opportunities. So Sapna has like what kind of brands or reputed companies, like what kind of internship opportunities from what kind of brands can you expect?
Of course, I mean, I wish that I could kind of get more clarity on what is an industry that you're keen to, pursue your career in. But if I were to give you a holistic understanding, like I mentioned in one of my slides, where I just give you a snippet of where current Indian students are, that would have given you a bit of brief understanding. So whether it's brands like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, strategy, and on the consulting front, whether it's Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Siemens, Samsung, more on the tech front, whether it's Credit Suisse, Bank of America, um, uh, Citibank, corporate finance programs, within a PepsiCo, for instance, in the retail or the finance sector, or whether that's like in general rotational programs with organizations like Rakuten, with Amazon, with a Roland Burger, for instance, right? So I think it completely depends what sector you're looking for. But what I can assure you is that I don't think ISE has left any stone unturned when it comes to bringing the top 400 companies to campus, whether it's for recruitment, for internship, or full time.
That's great. So Chirag has one question. So basically, do employers prefer local European language speakers, or you know, does that not matter? So
Absolutely. So, Chirag, again, if you are looking for a very specific, let's say a marketing role, right, like a brand marketing or a social media marketing role, maybe with a PepsiCo in Germany, right? Now that would require probably knowing or having an understanding of local language knowledge, which is German, right? But again, all of these companies that I mentioned across, so whether if you're looking at Amazon in Luxembourg, whether you're looking at Rolenberger in Germany, whether you're looking at the UK for plethora of like iBanking or consulting roles, all of these are open, are rather recruiting native English speakers, right? So I think when you come to campus and when you go through the entire, whether it's the career forum, we also have a dedicated platform, guys, where you put in your resumes for every job opening, right? So now, if say for instance, an Amazon has a product marketing role on its website, we also get a similar listing on our internal portal. The difference here being that your resume will be picked up a lot faster through the internal portal, because that's the connect that we've built with them, as opposed to the external Amazon website, right? So to answer your question, Chirag, it would depend what role, what company, and what industry you're looking for. If it's a more generalized role, or if it's a more if it's through the MBA career path, then I don't think local language is a necessity. But if you're looking for a very niche role, then maybe yes.
great. So Swasthi Sumita Tiwari wants to know what are the career prospects post IEC MBA in the US or in India?
So, Swasti, to be honest, USA, in very candidly, will not be a target market, for an ISE MBA graduate, because in general, the US recruitment market is a very closed market for non-American schools, right? Because they, of course, if you study in the US, you would be aware you get something called the OPT, which is like a one, if unless if you do a STEM program, you get 3 years, right? And then the recruitment process works very differently. You are then part of the lottery system, for a visa, vis-a-vis Europe, where right from day one your visa is sponsored. So whether decide to spend 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, you don't almost have this sword hanging over your head that, oh my god, is the lottery going to come through, is my visa going to come through? You're sponsored from day one in Europe. So US, I would say, is going to be very challenging if you are looking to come to IESE and then recruit to North America. um, India, certainly. I mean, I think if you are, like, I came back to India post the MBA, right? If you are looking to come back to India, and something that I would still have you consider is the pay disparity, right? Of course, what you would make in a similar role in Europe would be a bit different, in India. So I think if you are planning to come back to India, I would do my research and understanding of the financial feasibility of it all. Right?
Great. So Asmith wants to know, what should be the GMAT score to be considered for a scholarship?
Um, Asmith, I would say that again, of course, it completely depends on your entire profile and why you deserve the scholarship. But I would, if I'm putting a number to it, I would say that 700 and upwards definitely puts you in a more comfortable position to be considered by the committee for scholarship.
So I think this is one question that you can definitely answer. Like, what are the desired core qualities of an applicant that ISC looks for?
Of course, very, very happy to answer this question. Thank you, Alankriti, for asking this. So, the core qualities that I look for, in an IESE candidate, I simply tell myself that would I want this person in my team? Would I want this person in my section, in my cohort, right? And then I think about what would make this person amenable to me, right? And as a former student, now an alumni, qualities that are coherent to ISC are collaboration, a teamwork, ability to constantly unlearn and relearn, and I think most importantly, humility, right? Because I think, when you're in an environment, Alankriti, where you're constantly coming to class fully prepared, right? Like, I remember my first few case classes that I came so well prepared. I thought I had cracked the case like no one had. And I came to class and I suddenly realized that 10 other peers probably had better recommendations than I did, right? That doesn't mean I'm wrong, or that doesn't mean that I'm any lesser than they are, but it just means that I'm willing to let go of my own biases and embrace what they have to say, right? Learn from their perspectives, and which is why I think humility and ability to unlearn and relearn is something that I really, really look for as core qualities in an ideal IESE candidate.
Amazing. So I see that a lot of questions are still profile related. So guys, if you want to get evaluation on your profile by Ridhi, I've sent the link in the chat section. You can directly reach out to Ridhi, and I will also share her email ID. I'll send that again. So let's take two more questions. So this
Yes.
is a question by Rishabh, right? So is there an increased focus by school on tech companies considering the gradual move of the industry?
Absolutely, Rishabh. I mean, if I were to give you an example of this, is when I was in B school from 2015 to 2017, the overall percentage of students going into tech was probably 10 or less than 10, right? And that number has grown to 17 already. Which means that, of course, not only that the school is progressing and growing its, base in with tech firms and tech companies in Europe, but I think most importantly, even students are wanting to explore careers in tech, right? um, Consulting and finance and IB, of course, sounds very fun, exciting, and glorious. But I think students are realizing that fintech, tech marketing, product management in tech, rotational programs with big tech firms are becoming a lot more popular. So I think, if you ask me, I think the next 10 years, if the last 5 years saw the number grow by just 7%, in the next 5 years, this number is going to double. That's my personal take on it.
Yeah, sounds good. So, one last question. So, how are career gaps perceived in application? And you can also answer like, how would you tackle it, right,
Yeah.
as an applicant?
Absolutely. So, Amol, well, I understand that everyone has had a very different journey and a very different trajectory, right? And career gaps are normal, but I think the length of the gap and the ability for you to really use and showcase the option in the optional essay of why this career gap actually took place, right? See, honestly, if it's a 2 month or a 3 month career gap, it doesn't matter, right? We understand that if you're transitioning from one job to the other, or you've quit one job and you're starting another a few months later, that's fine. But if it's a 6 month gap or longer, I would have you address that in the optional essay and tell us why this gap happened, right? It could be due to various reasons. It could be personal reasons, health reasons, maybe because you realize that you're no longer passionate about something that you're doing right now, and you wanted to take time to figure out what is this next move that you want to make, right? And tell us how you spent those 6 months, or how you spent those 8 months or 12 months. How did you grow? How did you learn? Or what steps did you take to sort of make sure that post the gap you were in the right direction?
I hope, Amol, that answers your question. And with that, I think we should now end the session.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ridhi, so much, for being here. You have answered so many questions. Now, guys, if you have any question, you can reach out to Ridhi through your profile evaluation link or even through the email ID that I have shared. Next week, we have a session with ISB. I will share the link in the chat section. It's about the application process and interviews. So you can register for that session through that link. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much, Ridhi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katke, and the entire team at e-GMAT for this amazing opportunity. And thank you to each of you for being so engaging. I really hope to see a lot of you, applying in the early round of the round one. And please feel free to reach out to me via the, different platforms that we have available. And I'd be very happy to meet you. All right. Good night, guys. Thank you so much.